All right, welcome back to the Red and Blue Fight Pick Show. We are going to be breaking down UFC Fight Night Sandhagen versus Figueiredo, but first we're going to recap our picks from last week. So let's just recap the cards. So we started in the bantamweight division. We had Chelsea Chandler against Jocelyn Edwards. I thought this fight was going to go to decision, and I gave out Chandler plus 3.5. Didn't feel super confident. Edwards decision. Edwards just blew the doors off her, smoked her, finished her in the first round. It was a little bit of a surprise, but she looked good. Good for her. Moving on to the next fight. I know Red Ray gave out Roberto Romero money line. Red Ray, what happened?
He was looking good until we got, I think, kneed right in the face. So that was a tough one. And then that was pretty much the end of that one.
Okay, well said. Moving on, we had Jacqueline Amariam versus Polyana Viana. I believe we had Jacqueline in our chalk parlay. Is that correct, Red Ray? We did. And that was a dominant performance from the first 5 seconds. She immediately took her down, controlled her the entire first round. Didn't find the finish. Second round, literally the exact same thing. Took her down within the first 10 seconds again and just completely dominated her. That was easy peasy. Next fight, we had a red versus blue. Red Ray gave out Malcolm Wellmaker money line, and he also gave out a quarter unit on his knockout prop, which he hit on both of those. Unfortunately, Blue Bart took the L here. It was a pretty one-sided fight for as long as it lasted. Moving up the card, we were high on Damon Blackshear. He was part of the chalk parlay, and he pretty much dominated this fight from start to finish. There was a reason why he was a giant favorite. Moving on to the next fight, we had a unit and a half on Chris Gutierrez money line. He did get it done. It was a strange decision. We felt he won the first 2 rounds pretty clearly. He continues to show that he is lost if he gets taken down on his back. He has no way of knowing how to get up, but fortunately he had done enough in the first 2 rounds to get the win. Next fight, we were high on Evan Elder. We had 2 units on his money line. Going up against a young guy in Gage Young, who took the fight on short notice. I felt the line was pretty thin given the circumstances, so we had a nice 2 unit play on Evan Elder at minus 200. Moving up the card, this was a huge pick for Blue Bart. I was on Match Now. I was very passionate in my breakdown, and I was on the edge of my seat cheering, going through a roller coaster of emotions, but he got it done. He got it done. I couldn't have been more proud, and I am very excited to see who he takes on next. Moving up the card, we were high on Ikram Aliskerov. We gave out his money line in the chalk parlay, and we also gave out the under 1.5. Total rounds, he smoked Andre Muniz, destroyed him, got to finish in the first round. We hit on both of those. Moving up the card, Blue Bart was very passionate and gave out a win on Randy Brown. Ultimately, I thought he was going to end up winning by decision, but I just gave out his money line. I won't say he dominated the fight. He did win round 1, but he did get dropped at the end. And then he had a vicious knockout in the second round. That was very fun and cool to see. Moving on to the middleweight matchup, we had another red versus blue here. Red Ray was on Michelle Pereira, and Blue Bart was on Abus. In fact, he gave out 1 unit on Abus's money line, and he came through. Michelle Pereira, he thought he was going to a dance contest, I think. There was a video of him walking out in his dance routine. He cared more about dancing than he did fighting. And Booth was there to fight, and he got the win to make it 1-1. This was the final matchup in the Blue versus Ray series last week, as Red Ray was on David Onama. I was on Giga. It was a pretty competitive fight. Giga had his moments, but the difference was the takedowns, as David Onama was able to take him down 3 for 3 on takedowns, had 6 minutes of control. Giga is an outstanding kickboxer, but unfortunately, he has yet to develop a strong defensive wrestling game. And ultimately, that was the difference. Moving on to the co-main event, we had Anthony Smith, who is the UFC's all-time favorite fighter. After the fight was over, they put out a movie on Anthony Smith's career, which he has been a great fighter within the UFC for a long time. I'm not sure I don't want to say he didn't deserve, but I felt like it was a little much for Anthony Smith, especially when you compare it to Stipe. Didn't get really anything when he retired as the heavyweight GOAT. But anyway, Anthony Smith got starched in the first round by Zhang Mingyang. We gave out Zhang Mingyang first round KO. We didn't give an official pick, but that was our prediction. And we felt if Anthony Smith was able to survive the first round, he might have some opportunities in the second and third, depending on how Ming Yang's cardio looked. But Smith got cut open early in the first round and just got absolutely destroyed. Moving on to the main event, I was high on Ian Machado Gary. That was my final play, was Gary money line. Red Ray was on the Prates side, but we pretty much had the same breakdown. We felt Prates's path to victory was to knock him out in the first couple rounds. Never really had that stinging shot that ever caught Gary. The first 3 rounds were very clear for Gary. I was pretty surprised at Prates's cardio holding up. I felt his cardio looked better in the last 2 rounds than Gary's did. Gary was trying to get a lot of takedowns, which is something that I expected. He didn't do a great job of landing a lot of those takedowns or controlling Prates. He did win the fight pretty clearly in my eyes, and he covered. So just to recap the picks, we had the chalk parlay that hit. We had the Elder money line that hit. We had the Gutierrez money line that hit. We had Amorium inside the distance. We had Ikram under 1.5 rounds. I had a Schnell Brown parlay that hit. Red Ray had a Wellmaker money line and Wellmaker knockout that hit. He lost on Romero money line, and he lost a half unit on Onama by sub. But ultimately, when you add it all together, the blue and red fight picks together were up 7.15 units. Blue Bart went 7-0 on his picks. Red Ray, I want to say, went 6-2 overall. But at the end of the day, we had a historic weekend for the Red and Blue Fight Pick Show. Feeling very confident as we head into UFC Fight Night, Sandhagen versus Figueiredo. So let's jump right into it. We start in the women's flyweight division, and I'm going to let Red Ray go first on this one because I know he has a very passionate take. So Red Ray, how do you have it?
We got 2 low-level ladies here to start the card off. Obviously, you've seen Juliana Miller. She's a Ultimate Fighter winner. She blew through Brogan Walker on the finale. She's doesn't have any type of striking. She's kind of a grappler, or she does grapple. I mean, that's her main thing. I don't think she has any kind of takedowns or of like efficient takedowns whatsoever. She just kind of just pushes forward to get to the grappling. Petrovic is a similar fighter. Her striking is much better, but she doesn't throw with any power. She's much more technical, but it's very much like she's just out there sparring. I don't think she could hurt anybody with her stand up. And if you watched her last fight against Jamie Lynn Horth, who is not a high-level grappler at all. Korth had her back a couple of times in the exchanges, and she was definitely getting out-scrambled at moments. And Petrovic's three fights in the UFC, she hasn't been really impressive in any of it. She beat Liang Na in the first round in one of her fights, but Liang Na has 4 minutes of gas and then she just gets submitted. She just quits. So that's not really overly impressive. But I just think with Juliana Miller, she's, I think, plus 190 right now or plus 185. I got her earlier in the week at plus 240. I just think Miller's ground game is, she's, as a pure grappler, she's not bad at all. I mean, she has a grappling win over Fatima Klein, who's a high level MMA girl, so we know how good she is on the ground. And I just don't think Petrovic's going to do anything. It's not like Petrovic's going to want to stand there and just strike with it. Miller. Miller's just going to keep pushing forward. I don't know if Miller's going to get her down because Petrovic's actually got good grappling, but I think Petrovic's just going to try to take her down at some point. And once they go to the ground, I think Miller's going to win the scrambles. I could even see Miller getting a finish here. Petrovic's gas tank against Jamie Lynn Horth wasn't great in the third round. She was definitely getting controlled in the third round there. So I could just see Miller maybe finishing this thing late.
We are aligned with who we think is going to win. I don't feel as confident as you do, but what I will say about Juliana Miller is she was good on The Ultimate Fighter. She won The Ultimate Fighter. Then she fought Veronica Hardy and got taken down and controlled. But we've seen how much Veronica Hardy has improved since she come back. I rewatched her most recent fight, which was almost 2 years ago against Luana Santos, and Miller came out like a bat out of hell. She was throwing big strikes. She was landing some. I was kind of shocked knowing what was going to happen at what I was seeing early, because she won the first minute and she was throwing big strikes, but I think that she just completely gassed herself by throwing these giant punches. I think that the adrenaline had a big dump on her after, a minute and a half. Luana Santos withstood it and started landing some shots. They weren't massive shots, but they were consistent, strong strikes. And it kind of put Miller into shock. I don't think she was used to taking so many significant strikes like that in a row on the feet. She was trying to fight back. She didn't get dropped, but she didn't quit, but the referee stopped it and it was a good stoppage. Now it's been almost 2 years. I was reading in an interview with MMA Mania. Juliana Miller talked about how her grandmother passed away at the end of 2024. She talked a lot about it on The Ultimate Fighter, that her grandma was who raised her and how much she meant to her. A quote that stands out is, the last time she saw me compete in MMA, she saw me getting hurt. She saw me losing. She saw me on the downswing of my career, and I knew in my heart she probably wouldn't make it to my next fight. She goes on to talk about how she is injury free and very motivated going into this fight. And she is in the athletic prime of her career at 28 years old. She's got a birthday coming up next week, so she'll be 29. She's been off for 2 years, and she says she's healthy. I think she's going to outdamage Ivana, which is kind of the biggest reason why I'm picking her. We know that the number one criteria in MMA scoring is damage. And when I was rewatching Petrovic's fights, I mean, she doesn't really do any damage. She's not landing big shots. She's trying to win a match. She's not trying to win a fight. And for that reason is why I'm siding with Miller. I'm not super confident in it. I want to cheer for her to win based on the story I just told. So I'm going to give out Miller officially. Just her money line is plus 195. That's a good number. And I'm going to lean that she's going to be able to do more damage and potentially find a finish. But that is the official pick. Moving up the card, we jump to the heavyweight division for a very high level men's heavyweight fight as we have Thomas Peterson taking on Dontel Mays. Thomas Peterson minus 265 here. I'm not feeling super confident in either of these gentlemen. We last saw Thomas Peterson take on Shamil Gaziv. Was doing okay, and then he just he took a straight right and just kind of quit, in my opinion. The ref stepped in and stopped the fight. I mean, I guess it was a correct stoppage because Peterson just took his mouth guard out and was like, "Yep, you caught me with a good shot. I'm not going to try to get up or anything. Good job, Shamil." Prior to that, he beat Mo Usman pretty clearly. Prior to that, he fought Jamel Pogues and lost a decision in a fight I thought he won. Prior to that, he submitted the most unathletic heavyweight of all time, Chandler Cole, on the Contender Series. He's 30 years old. He's 6'1". He can wrestle. I just don't think he uses it as effectively as he could in some of these fights, or as necessary as he feels. Now, when you look at Dontel Mays, what does he struggle against? Defensive wrestling. I thought he had a chance against Walter Walker in his last fight if he could just withstand the first round. I thought Walker was going to fade. But it's just a problem that we see with Dontel Mays is he gets taken down. He doesn't know how to get up. He sucks at defending takedowns. He's got decent hands. He's got decent cardio for heavyweight. He has knockout potential. He has 6 knockouts on his career and his 11 wins. He's 6-8 overall in the UFC. But I think that if Mays can avoid getting death wrestled, which I think he can, he's 6'6" and Peterson's only 6'1". Typically, we've seen Dontel Mays struggle against big heavyweights. Shamil Gaziv, 6'4", Walter Walker's 6'3", Nascimento's 6'3". I think the frame of Peterson is going to have a hard time keeping Mays down and controlling him for the entire fight. I think after the first round, it's going to be a real struggle. I think Mays can steal a decision here. I do think this fight is going to go to decision. I like that a lot. Fight to go to decision is minus 125, and Mays to win by decision is plus 600. I think that's his most likely path to victory. And so my official pick is going to be Mays by decision. Red Ray, how do you have it?
I'm not overly impressed by either of these guys, so I can't. And it's just going to be a sloppy heavyweight fight. We saw Peterson last fight; he just got dropped by Gaziv after he got him down early. But I think he thinks that he's like getting better as a striker, which is worrisome because he's not getting better. So he just needs to stick to what he's good at, and that's wrestling. And Mays, obviously, that's his weak point. Mays' only chance of victory here is by keeping it standing. But we have never really seen him get better at that. He just doesn't look like, I don't even know if he's training. I've heard that hasn't even posted on Instagram or anything since his last fight. So who knows if he's even getting better. Last fight, he looked worse than ever on the scale, which is unbelievable for him because he never looks good anyway. So I'm just going to guess that Thomas Peterson hopefully like wrestles and gets it down and will control him. I don't think he's going to be able to finish him. Gaziv couldn't finish Mays on the ground. He never gets TKO'd on the ground. He gets submitted. I don't know if Peterson's going to submit him. So I'm probably just going to say Peterson by decision here.
All right, let's move on up the card as we move to the men's bantamweight division. As we have Gaston Bolanos against Quan Lee. Gaston minus 150, Quan Lee plus 125. Red Ray, how do you have it?
This is another one I don't have a strong lean either way. Quan Lee, we saw him against Gutierrez. He doesn't really love to. He strikes. But he's got some good power, but he doesn't really throw many combinations. So it's a lot of like one punch here and there. Gutierrez was lighting him up with leg kicks. He did finally wrestle at some point. That was the first time in really any of his like regional stuff or anything that he wrestled more than just like here and there. I think he had 11 takedown attempts there, but he only got Gutierrez down twice. And the first time he couldn't even keep him down. And we talked about this earlier, that Gutierrez doesn't have any get up game, so the fact that he wasn't able to keep Gutierrez down at some point it's worrisome there. So Bolanos has obviously an extensive striking background. He's has a couple of spinning back elbow KOs, which is his go-to like move, I guess. I tried it a couple of times against Aaron Phillips in the first fight. He actually did land him, but he didn't finish him. He had a couple of his grappling game was definitely his weak point early on in his career, but it's definitely gotten better. We saw him last fight against Romias, who not the greatest fighter on the planet either, but he did show that he was able to, even though he got taken down a couple of times, he reversed a couple and then was able to get back up and really took no damage. I mean, I think at one point Romias maybe had a looked like a rear naked choke in, but that was the closest he got, and Bolanos got out of there. So I think he's really working on his grappling game, and so I just think probably Bolaños is going to be the better striker, even though I haven't been overly impressed with his striking in the UFC. We saw him get absolutely destroyed by Marcus McGee, but obviously Marcus McGee's a much higher level than these two guys. But and he hasn't been able to knock out either Romius or Aaron Phillips. Aaron Phillips is not a striker at all, so that was not so much. So I'm going to just assume that Bolaños can get the better of the striking if it stays striking, and he's going to be able to hold off Kwang Lee's takedown defense or takedown if he tries to get it to the ground. So I'm going to guess Bolaños. I don't think he might be able to get it a KO. Kwang Lee got KO'd his last fight against Zhao Long, so doesn't have the strongest chin in the planet. So we'll say Bolaños, maybe a late round KO or a decision here.
Yeah, we're pretty aligned here. I won't spend too much time. I like Bolaños. I think I like him a couple notches more than you do. He looked much improved in his last fight, as you mentioned. The wrestling looked very improved in his post fight with Bisping. He talked about how much he improved his wrestling, BJJ, even his striking, even though he is a striker. I think his confidence is running high right now, and when you look at Quan Lee, I think his confidence is very low. He is 0-2 so far in the UFC. I don't think he's going to be able to take down and control Gaston and dominate him like that. I think he will lose the striking fight. He's just coming off being finished in November. He's 33 years old. He hasn't really shown much. I don't really know what would be different in this fight. I think I'm a couple notches higher on Gaston than you are. I just like his money line. He's the decision, I think, is what is most likely to happen. And that is plus 185. So moving up the card, we go to the women's strawweight division as we have Marina Rodriguez at plus 260 with the comeback on Jillian Robertson at minus 340. Marina Rodriguez is 4-4. I'm sorry, 1-4 in her last 5 within the UFC. 17-5 overall, 8-5 in the UFC. She's a Muay Thai striker. Really struggles with defending takedowns. I mean, there was a point when she was running really hot in the UFC where I thought maybe she was going to get a fight for the title. But lately, I think she's been exposed that there's a pretty clear game plan when you're fighting Marina Rodriguez. It's to take her down and control her. I will say to her credit, she's never been submitted before, even going against fighters like Verna Jandiroba, Mackenzie Dern. She beat Mackenzie Dern. I just think that Marina Rodriguez is 38 years old, and she is fighting Jillian Robertson, who's in the prime of her career right now, as she is about to turn 29 years old. She's looked very improved on her feet. I don't think she's going to be wanting to keep the fight standing by any means. Her game plan is going to be relentlessly looking for takedowns, looking to control and look for a submission on Rodriguez. Like I pointed out, Rodriguez has never been subbed, so I don't think she's going to be able to find the submission. I like her to win by decision at plus 115. And ultimately, it just comes down to, for me, relentless takedowns for Robertson. I also want to point out she used to fight at flyweight, so she's used to fighting bigger girls. She was landing takedowns on somebody like Miranda Maverick, who is a big, strong, thick 125er. And now you're fighting a 38-year-old who's built like a stick. and can't defend takedowns. Robertson's minus 340 for a reason. I think she's going to be able to find the takedowns and win the fight by decision at plus 115. Red Ray, how do you have it?
Yeah, we're pretty aligned here. I don't even think Marina's takedown defense is necessarily that awful. I mean, I think I think it's like 60% or something like that. But she has absolutely no get up game. So if she gets taken down, which she ultimately does because people just shoot a lot of takedowns on her, she just doesn't get up. I mean, like you said, she's never been submitted. I think that's kind of why she doesn't get up, because she doesn't make any kind of she doesn't like attempt to risk like giving up her back or anything like that. So to get up, so she'll just sit there and play safe guard and not. So that's why she doesn't get submitted. So, um, but if you ever listen to Dean Thomas, that's Robertson's main coach. He's all about ground and pound, and that's like all he works on with her. And if you ever talk to Robertson when she gets a decision, she's always upset about it. So her main goal all the time is finishes, which is not the most common thing in the women's division. So yeah, I'm definitely on Robertson. I think she's going to get the takedowns. I think she's been very impressive at 115. Um, so I just think, I also think, like you said, I don't think Marina's going to give her a submission, but we've seen Robertson. She throws a lot of elbows. I could see her cutting, maybe getting a TKO stoppage on the ground. So I like that Robertson by KO play at plus 800.
I also wanted to mention I was listening to an interview she gave. I want to say it was with bjpenn.com. And first of all, she looks absolutely ripped. She is, I mean, like I said, she used to fight at flyweight. She talked about how she would never be able to take a fight on short notice at strawweight with how much weight she cuts. She's a very diligent, taking her career very seriously, does everything by the book. Um, she's a thick 115er, and I think she's going to be able to get the takedowns, like I said. So moving on up the card, we go to the men's middleweight division as we have Ryan Loder at plus 300 with the comeback on Azamat Bekoev at minus 400. Red Ray, how do you have it?
Watched Loder he was on the Ultimate Fighter, had a nice won the fighter won the last fight against Robert Valentine. We saw Valentine fight Doris Finney recently. So he definitely, and we saw him struggle with takedowns there. Loder's a D1 college wrestler, so he was able to take down Valentine a couple of times there and finish. If you watch Loder on the regional scene, though, he does have issues getting guys who have decent wrestling down. And he's not a great striker. And now you going against Bekoev here, we saw him just absolutely dominate Zach Reese last time, but Zach Reese is just like a whatever. So I don't know how impressive that was, but if you watch Bekoev on the regional scene, also he does get chinned a couple, so his doesn't have the greatest chin on the planet, but that's not going to be a worry here. Loder has no power on the feet, but he also has a lot of power striking, and I've seen Bekoev get taken down a couple of times, but he gets back up almost immediately. Um, and I've seen him wrestle with guys who are also supposedly good wrestlers. Um, the only issue I would say is he does have some cardio issues seen in third, fourth round. He does slow down. And we've seen him against Dylan Butka on the regional scene. He went 5 rounds with Butka, and we saw Butka was awful in the UFC and got cut already. So that's not a great thing. I mean, Butka's obviously a wrestler. That's his bread and butter, but going 5 rounds with him is not the greatest thing in the world. But I just think he's going to be able to stop Loder's takedowns early, and I think he's going to hit Loder a standing. I think he KOs him in the first or second round.
Yeah, we're pretty aligned here. Ryan Loder, training out of Team Alpha Male, looked great against Robert Valentine. I just think Robert Valentine is not very good. Like you said, he likes to wrestle. He likes to take you down and beat you up. I don't think that's going to be a great option here against Bekoev. In the prime of his career, 29 years old, trains out of American Top Team, has given multiple interviews talking about his beef with Hamza Chimaev. I think this guy has real title shot aspirations one day. We'll see if he gets there. I think this is a pretty easy matchup for him, fighting a guy who isn't going to be able to take him down, who's not dangerous on the feet. he took the fight on short notice against Zachary Reese. I don't remember who Reese was supposed to fight that card, but I know the guy pulled out within 1 week. Bekoev stepped in, and when he stepped in, we got a pretty good number on him. I felt pretty confident he was going to win just looking at his previous history, and he, obviously finished in the first round. So I agree with Red Ray here. I do think he's going to find the finish. Bekoev by knockout, I saw it plus 200. So moving up the card, we move to the women's bantamweight division as we have Yana Santos at plus 125 taking on Miesha Cupcake Tate at minus 150. I like Tate here. We just saw Yana Santos, her past three of her past four fights, she's lost. She's won in three of her last four, but we've seen her struggle against girls that want to take her down and wrestle her. And that's going to be Tate's plan here. That's what I was going to say is we just saw Tate in her last performance. I shouldn't say we just saw it because it was over a year ago, almost 15 months ago, but she was able to successfully take down her opponent. Took her down 4 times, had over nearly 11 minutes of control, found the submission late in the round. Miesha Tate giving interviews talking about how she thinks she matches up well against Kayla Harrison. I think she has real title aspirations to make another run for the title. She took a couple of years off before she came back to the UFC, was out for over a year again. I'm not sure if that was due to injury. I'm assuming it was based on her age. But when you look at her record, she's 20-9 overall, but you have to take into account who she's fought. She's 7-6 in the UFC with losses coming to Strikeforce Sarah Kaufman, who at the time was a very good fighter. Ronda Rousey, obviously, Kat Zingano, Ronda Rousey, Amanda Nunes, Raquel Pennington, and more recently, Caitlin Vieira, Lauren Murphy. Not as good as the other women I mentioned, but she took a lot of time off. She came back. I think she's very motivated. I think she's going to be able to take Yana Santos down with relative ease. And I like her by submission at plus 450. And that is going to be my official pick. Red Ray, how do you have it?
Yeah, we're pretty aligned here. Yana Santos, she fought Chelsea Chandler last time and looked really good, but obviously that's Chelsea Chandler. We just saw her get knocked out by Jocelyn Edwards. Any fight before that, she gets taken down pretty much by anybody who attempts to take her down. I think she's only got a 42% takedown defense. She got taken down 4 times by Holly Holm, 3 times by Caitlin Vieira. So Aspen Ladd even got her twice. So I think Miesha Tate is far superior grappler, and 2 of the fights, like you mentioned, Lauren Murphy and Vieira, Miesha wasn't really able to get them down, but Lauren Murphy's takedown defense is almost like 70%, and Vieira's is 88. So anybody that can get taken down, Miesha Tate does take down. So I just think she's going to be able to handle her. Just going to get her down at some point, and Miesha's grappling is solid. I don't know if she gets a submission. I don't think Yana's been submitted since 2017. So this might be similar to the Robertson thing if she can get a TKO that way, or else she just controls her on the ground and just gets a decision.
All right, we are aligned there. Moving up the card, we go to the men's lightweight division as we have Jeremy Lil Heathen Stevens making his return to the UFC with a comeback on Mason Jones at minus 600, also making his return to the UFC. Red Ray, how do you have it?
Is this at the? Oh, it is a lightweight, so he's even up at 155. Oh, he always fights at 155. I was thinking he's 145. Yeah, I have no idea what we're going to get as Stevens. He hasn't had a UFC fight or an MMA fight, I think, since 2022 when he was in the PFL. I think he's lost 7 of 8. I mean, when he was fighting in MMA, I mean, he was a decent striker. He could get taken down by guys controlled there. Was pretty much a low volume striker, just trying to land the big shot. Mason Jones, we saw him in the UFC a while back. Last fought Ludovic Klein. I think he was a pretty decent favorite there, and he got beaten up pretty badly by Ludovic Klein. Again, he got dropped once. He was 1-2, I think, in the UFC during his time there. He did beat David Onama, which was a decent win, and he took him down 8 times. I think if he brings that game plan here, that would be his best chance of victory. I don't love the line at minus 575. If you watch Mason, even on the regional scene, his last fight, I think it was against Michael Flingana or something like that. He was a decent striker, he was undefeated at the time. Mason made no attempt to take him down. That's I don't know, maybe he took him down later in the day, later in the fight, but first 2 rounds, no attempt. He was just striking with him. He was getting lit up at times. I mean, they were going back and forth, but there was times where he was really getting hit hard. And I think if Jeremy Stephans hits him that hard, I don't know if Ludovic Klein can knock you down. I think Jeremy Stephans is a harder hitter than Ludovic Klein. So I mean, if he can get hit, I mean, if he doesn't go to the wrestling early, it's not going to be a minus 575. It's going to look very even on the feet. So I think this is similar to the David Onama fight, where last fight against Giga, where I said he wasn't going to look minus 200 if he was standing, and he didn't. He didn't look. He almost got knocked out. But when he wrestled, he did look like minus 400, 500. So it's going to be similar to that. If Jones comes with a good fight plan, then he should just be able to take Stephens down and control him, maybe even finish him. We saw him get finished by Nathan Schultz in the PFL's last fight. So if he decides to go that way, if he decides to stand, though, I don't love that. I did see the KO Stephens KO only is plus 350. I think if Jones gets him down, I think his main path to victory is submission or decision. I don't know if he's going to KO Stephens, so I like that line. So, but that's all. But I assume that Jones does wrestle, and I think he'll pull the victory.
So I think I'm definitely much higher on Mason Jones here than you are. I heard you questioning yourself when I said the fight was at lightweight, and you're like, "Oh, he always fights at lightweight." No, before he left the UFC, he was fighting at featherweight. Jeremy Stephens, that is, and now he's going to be 39 years old next month. I don't think he wants to cut weight anymore. He hasn't been in the UFC since 2021. Hasn't fought MMA since November 25th, 2022. Was fighting in bare knuckle fighting championships, was 3-0 there with doctor stoppage over Jimmy Rivera, unanimous decision over someone named Bobby Taylor, and then he had a corner stoppage against Eddie Alvarez. I wanted to point that out just to say he hasn't knocked anybody out since February 24th of 2018. He knocked out Josh Emmett with an elbow. Prior to that, the month before, he had knocked out Doi Hoi Choi. But we're talking almost over 7 years ago since he's knocked anybody out. He's fighting now up a weight class. Those knockouts were at featherweight against the guy in the prime of his career in Mason Jones. When you look at Mason Jones' record in the UFC, he went 2-2. He felt he won the fight against Mike Davis. It was a very close fight. I'm very high on Mike Davis, even though he really let me down in his last fight. He beat Alan Patrick. It was a no contest that should have been a win for Mason Jones. He beat David Onama. We just saw David Onama this past week. I think David Onama has also very much improved since that fight in 2021. And then a close fight against Ludovic Klein that Jones said he also felt he won that fight. He then got cut after that and went 4-0 in the regional scene. He had a very long interview with the UFC. I was hoping to read he was going to be looking for takedowns as well, as you kind of mentioned. He didn't say he was going to be looking for takedowns. He just said he's basically going to destroy Stephens, not only with his hands, but he's going to remind him this is MMA, hitting him with elbows, hitting him with knees, hitting him with kicks, kicking his legs, kicking him in the head, kicking him in the stomach. I think we have a bigger man in the prime of his career taking on a man who is fighting up a weight class because he doesn't want to cut weight anymore. Hasn't knocked anybody out in over 7 years, which is his most likely path to victory in the prime of his career, was to knock you out. If Jones does wrestle, maybe he's bluffing by trying not to give away his game plan. I think he out wrestles Jeremy Stephens pretty easily. There's a reason why Mason Jones is minus 600. I feel very confident in him in this fight. Ultimately, I am going to go with Jones by decision. because Stephans hasn't been finished by KO since 2020. Jones only has 3 submissions on his record, which I'm sure he's capable of doing it, but I just don't think he's going to attempt to. That being said, I like Jones by decision at plus 145. Moving up the card, we go to the men's bantamweight division as we have Cameron Smothermon at plus 115 taking on Sahir City at minus 135. This was a tough one for me. Smotherman looked very good against Jake Hadley on short notice back in, I want to say, it was in October. Pretty shocking. Hadley was minus 600 favorite. Smotherman coming in on short notice, had gotten knocked out in his Dana White Contender Series fight. It was kind of a bad stoppage. Was winning it was only 1 minute long fight. Was winning the fight for the first 50 seconds. Took a straight punch, got sat down, took some follow up punches. I think he's pretty good. He's mostly just a boxer. Doesn't really throw a lot of kicks. But just with how good he looked in the last fight, that's why I'm having a hard time picking this fight, because when I first looked at this fight, I was pretty confident on City, but then when I actually looked at it more into it, I wasn't as confident. I did read a long interview that City gave with UFC.com. He talked about now he's been training also at the MMA lab for the first time, training with guys like Mario Batista, Marcus McGee, Kyler Phillips. He does try to wrestle in his fights. Problem is, so far within the UFC, he is 0-8 on his takedown attempts. He had 2 fights against Ramon Taveras. He got the win on him in the Dana White Contender Series fight. It was an early stoppage. It was a bad stoppage. Lost a split decision to Ramon Taveras. Felt he won that fight. Ironically, then beat Garrett Armfield by split decision and actually thought he lost that fight. He's been talking about how he's working a lot on his mental health. He reads every day to try to work on his mental health. He's been envisioning himself winning this fight. And he asked an interesting question to himself: what felt better, getting a win in a fight he lost or losing a fight he felt won? Said he's not sure what felt better or what felt worse. I think he said ultimately his goal is to feel good about his performance, whether it does end up being a win or a loss. And just given the fact that he has upgraded his training with the MMA lab, training with those guys I mentioned, I'm going to lean towards Surhi. I think this will go to decision ultimately, and I have Surhi by decision as my official pick at plus 175. Red Ray, how do you have it?
Yeah, you pretty much agree with everything you said there. I think City is definitely the better all-around striker. He obviously uses all of his limbs, unlike Smotherman is mainly just a boxer, like you said. Smotherman is mildly chinny. Like you said, he got TKO'd on the Dana White Contender Series, and he did get TKO'd before that. It's his only 2 of his 4 losses are by KO. City does get beat up. We've seen him against Tavares, and we've seen him against Armfield. He gets hit and he just starts bleeding. So I wouldn't be surprised if Smotherman hits him here and he just starts getting busted open. But it seems like once City does start bleeding, he almost turns it on. He gets better as the fight goes on. So we're gonna I'm gonna side with City here, but I don't know. I could see if he does win, I think it's probably more of a decision type of fight. Hopefully, this is his 3rd straight fighter that's mainly a boxer. Tavares is mainly a boxer. Armfield is mainly a boxer. Hopefully, that's helps him get into some kind of rhythm out there instead of that he can actually start maybe pull away. And the last 2 fights have been pretty close fights. So I'm going to go with City, but I have not a ton of confidence.
Agreed. Let's keep it in the men's bantamweight division as we move on to Montel Jackson at minus 200 with the comeback on Daniel Marcos at plus 170. Red Ray, how do you have it?
I'm going to be on the Jackson side here. He's definitely the more powerful striker. I think he's definitely the cleaner like defensively sound striker. He has one knockdown in his last 7 fights, or at least one knockdown in his last 7 fights, which is pretty crazy for a 135er. Marcos is also a good striker, and he does have solid volume, but we've seen him with longer, rangier strikers like Davy Grant. He had issues with. I thought he lost that fight pretty clearly, and somehow he won the decision. But I think Montel Jackson, his strikes or absorbed per minute is around 1, which is a pretty crazy number. So I just think that he's just going to be able to defensively be able to not get hit as much. And if he does land against Marcos, I've seen him like against Julio Arce, barely even looked like he landed a jab, and he knocked him out, or knocked him down at least, and almost finished the fight there. Obviously, we saw him against Blackshear, just one straight left down the pipe. He knocked him out. I'm not going to really count the Ronnie Yaha one, or the JP Buys. Those guys are just chinny. But I just think Montel Jackson's power is just what is going to be significant. The moments I think he's going to land are going to be more significant than Marcos when he lands. And Montel, he could go to the wrestling. We've seen him. There's 2 losses in the UFC. I think is Ricky Simon and blanking on the other guy.
Johns.
Brett Johns, and he got out wrestled in both of those. So that's his path that he does lose, is getting out wrestled. Marcos doesn't really shoot takedowns. I know he had 2 against Adrian Yanez, but that was just because Adrian Yanez just tries to box. So I'm sure that was just as trying to mix it up a little bit, but he's not going to get takedowns against Montel Jackson. And I think Montel Jackson could get takedowns against him if he wanted to, but even if it stays standing, I just think he's going to land the more powerful shots. So we saw Marcos get rocked against by Castaneda, has no power in his hands. So if Castaneda is able to rock him, I think Montel Jackson can. So I'm going to pick Montel Jackson. I don't know if I really know how he's going to win it. He could win by knockout or decision. The Jackson finish only is -195, which is basically the same as his money line. So on the off chance he does lose a decision, I think that covers you. So I like that play.
Yeah, overall, we're very much aligned here. I will say I love Jackson in this spot. The line is -200. I think that really the reason the line is only -200 is because Marcos is undefeated. I think people see an undefeated fighter, and you see plus money in that, and you think there's value. But when you actually look at this matchup, just looking at the Marcos side first, he is a good striker, but like Ray said, we did see him mixing a little bit of the wrestling against Yanez. Those were really just takedowns to stall. He wasn't really trying to do anything with it. It caught Yanez off guard. They came out of nowhere, and it surprised everybody because he hasn't wrestled before. He was a little bit bigger than Yanez was overall. I think Yanez should be moving down to flyweight. But even prior to that, the tallest guy he had fought was Davy Grant. We saw how much he struggled with that. I also thought that Davy Grant won that fight. He's only got 1 finish in the UFC so far, and that came against Simon Oliveira when he hit him with some big body shots, some knees to the body. Simon hurled over and got finished. So not a clean knockout by any means. His record overall, when you look at it, again, 17-0, 6-0 in the UFC so far. Only has 8 TKO finishes on his record. A couple of those, one by retirement, one by doctor stoppage. Doesn't have a ton of knockout power. We've never seen Montel Jackson get knocked out anyways. Like Ray pointed out, his 2 losses came to death wrestlers, which is not Marcos by any means. We've seen the power that Jackson has with the back-to-back knockouts in the first round. This guy's got the biggest hands in the bantamweight division. I remember hearing one night that he wears heavyweight-sized gloves for a bantamweight. I think he's going to knock out Marcos. I really do. He's on a 5-fight win streak. I think this guy is scorching hot right now. This is his last win against Blackshear. I was actually on the Blackshear side. I thought Blackshear was going to be able to out-grapple him like we had seen. We just saw Blackshear last week. He looked outstanding. That's how good Montel Jackson is. I love Jackson here. I love his money line price at -200. And I love his knockout at +350. So moving on up the card, we move to the men's welterweight division as we have Santiago Ponzinibbio taking on Daniel Rodriguez. And boy, this one was really tough for me. These guys are very similar in height. They're both about 6'1". They're both 38 years old, and they have the same reach. They also have a very similar UFC uh, story. They both came in a little bit of an early struggle, went on big win streaks, and then more recently, Ponzinibbio 3-5 over his last 8. On the Rodriguez side, he started in the UFC about 8-1, and then more recently has lost 3 of his last 4. He's 9-4 overall in the UFC. They're both primarily strikers. We've seen Daniel Rodriguez struggle a little bit with some defensive wrestling at times. Ponzinibbio has shown pretty good takedown defense. He's coming off the TKO finish over Carlston Harris. Problem is, Carlston Harris did knock down Ponzinibbio in the last fight, which worries me a little bit. I have about 0 confidence in this fight. I'm going to lean on the Ponzinibbio side only because I do think his overall wrestling game is better. We've seen him offensive wrestle before. We just saw Rodriguez's last fight. He also didn't look great against Alex Morono. He won by a split decision. We've seen how bad Morono has looked. I actually think this is going to be a very exciting fight for the fans. But I don't have any strong opinion on who's going to win this fight. I'm going to lean Ponzinibbio on I flipped a coin 100 times and it came back 52 times on Ponzinibbio. So we're going to go with Ponzinibbio, just money line. Red Ray, how do you have it?
I'm going to be on the Rodriguez side, but like you said, it's not a confident play at all. I just think you watch the last 2 fights, Rodriguez, like you said, he didn't look great against Moreno and he didn't look great against Gastelum, but his volume is still there. I think he's landed 127 and 123 significant strikes his last 2 fights. Ponzinibbio hasn't landed more than 76 significant strikes in a fight since 2022. So I mean, we've only seen Rodriguez get knocked out once recently by an Ian Gary head kick. So, and Ponzinibbio gets rocked almost every fight now at this point, or dropped or something like that. He does have 2 fights against Moreno and against Carlton Harris where he's gotten 3rd round finishes. So there is a chance where he just like, obviously he's not a quitter. He's not a quitter or anything or like that. So he's obviously giving it his all 3 rounds. So he might try to come out, but I just don't know if he's going to land anything big on D-Rod to the point where he can knock D-Rod out. So I'm just going to assume that D-Rod can outland him if he can outland him by 40 strikes, around like 50 strikes, like he did like with Alex Moreno, and just make it look easy that way. So that's my guess, is that maybe he can win over 3 rounds here. But like I said, I'm not putting money on either of these guys.
One other thing I wanted to point out on the Ponzinibbio side, 2-4 over his last six fights. 3 of those fights were losses by split decision. It could have easily went his way, and had that been the case, he would be in a much better spot than he is now. An overall record of 11-8 within the UFC, could be 14-5, could be just a little bit better. I wouldn't doubt this fight goes to split decision. Moving on up the card, we go to the co-main event as we move to the men's middleweight division, as we have Rinner de Ritter at plus 260 taking on Bo Nickal at minus 340. Red Ray, how do you have it?
Should be an interesting fight. de Ritter, obviously, two a division champion over from 2-0 since coming to the UFC. But he's going to be huge for the division, or huge for the. He's going to be much bigger than Bo. I think he's going to be like 3 inches taller. I did see Bo was like, just like last week, he's 226. He was like nervous. He's got like a week to cut that weight. So I don't know. He's not like a super in shape guy anyway. So that's kind of an interesting move that he would get that big. But so we'll see. But but de Ritter is like a muscular, huge guy. So he's going to be the much bigger guy in the fight. And this is similar to like the last fight where Bo took on Paul Craig. It's a guy who wants to get to the fight to the ground. So I'm assuming Bo's game plan is going to be pretty much the same, where he just wants to keep it standing and striking. But DeRitter fights differently than Paul Craig. DeRitter's not going to just want to keep it standing. He's definitely going to try to get this fight to the ground. Paul Craig didn't shoot any takedowns against Craig or against Nickal. DeRitter will just continuously spam takedowns. His striking might even be worse than Paul Craig's, to be honest. It's awful. He got rocked by Mearshart in the first round. He did somehow knock Mearshart down. I don't know what Mearshart was doing. In that first round, it was Ritter was literally just like throwing wild like shots that had nothing on him, and Mearshart was his hands were down by his waist. It was the end of the first round. It was a really wild sequence, but um, I'm interested just to see because I don't know if Nickal is going to be able to. Not that I think Ritter is going to take him down. I just can see Ritter maybe clinching him up the cage a lot and attempting takedowns and maybe tiring Nickal out. I know DeRitter, he was absolutely gassed in the third round against Mearshart, so we know he doesn't really have 3 rounds of cardio to push takedowns and stuff like that, but we've never really seen anyone push takedowns on Nickal for 3 rounds. So I don't know how well his cardio, obviously you'd hope, but we've seen wrestlers gas in MMA before. It's not like that would just be like because he can grapple or because he can wrestle full fights that he has that kind of MMA cardio. So, but I think Nichols should be able to win a decision here just by outstriking him and keeping the fight standing. But I don't have a play either way on the line. I like the over 1.5. It's -200, and I think the fight goes the distance might be a sneaky play +140. I think I did see that if you want to play to get Nichols line down, his double chance KO or decision is -175. So gets it down from wherever he's at, like right now, -300. So
Overall, pretty lined. I think I'm a little more confident in Bo Nickal than you are. He's kind of just fighting Paul Craig again and Renner to Ritter, a guy with bad striking and is a submission specialist. I was on Renner to Ritter against Kevin Holland, but Holland has no takedown defense. Bo Nickal is obviously an outstanding wrestler. I don't know how Ritter wins this fight. He'd have to win the fight by taking him down and finding a submission, which I just don't think is going to happen against the level of wrestling that Bo Nickal has. I just don't see a path for DeRitter here. But at the same time, I like Bo Nickal looked very patient in his fight with Paul Craig, didn't take any chances. He was very happy with his performance. I mean, he won 30-27. That's what you're supposed to do. Still so very raw within MMA. But I feel confident he can do the exact same thing he just did to Paul Craig and just kind of slowly pick him apart, win the rounds clearly, but not in devastating fashion. I don't see him shooting takedowns here on a guy who wants to try to tie you up and find a submission. I think this fight is going to play out very similar to the last Paul Craig fight. I'm hoping for maybe a late round finish for Bo Nickal. I think his cardio will be better than in Ritter. I'm just confident in Bo Nickal's athleticism. And my official pick is going to be Nickal by decision, but his -7.5 is -135. So if he does get some sort of finish, he could still be a part of that. I don't see him losing rounds. I don't know how he would lose a round. So I think the -7.5 is totally fine at -135. So we move on to the main event of the night as we have Corey, the Sandman Sandhagen, at -550 taking on Devison Figueiredo at +375. This one, I don't say this one's pretty easy, but it's pretty easy for me. Sandhagen, I think, is going to have his way with Figueiredo here. I don't think Figueiredo is going to be able to take down and control Sandhagen. I mean, we've seen him do that in other fights. He's 37 years old. He is 5'5". He's never fought a guy as big as Corey Sandhagen. Sandhagen, in his interviews with the media today, said he has never felt as confident in his skills to win a title as he does now. But we haven't seen Sandhagen getting a lot of finishes historically in his career within the UFC. Most recently, he had a doctor stoppage win over Song Yadong. Doesn't really count. Knocked out Frankie Edgar with the flying knee. Respectfully, Frankie Edgar was on his last legs at the end of his career. He finished Marlon Moraes. Guess what? Marlon Moraes has 10 losses by KO, 2 by submission. And then in his first 3 fights in the UFC, he finished 2 jobbers and he submitted Mario Batista. Other than that, all of his other wins have been by decision. Figueiredo, obviously a former champion, no slouch. I just think that Sandhagen is going to have the advantage everywhere on the feet. He uses all 8 weapons: hands, elbows, knees, kicks. We just saw Figueiredo get 50-45 by Peterson. I don't know his path to victory is. I think his path to victory would have to be to take down Sandhagen and beat him up. I just think there's such a low chance of that happening. I don't see Figueiredo knocking him out clean. We haven't seen him get a knockout since 2020 over Joseph Benavidez. At flyweight, again, this is at bantamweight against a guy who is way bigger than Benavidez. I'm very confident Corey Sandhagen here, but I do like his decision. His decision is -150, and that is my official pick. Red Ray, how do you have it?
Yeah, we're pretty much the same here. I think Sandhagen's better everywhere. You've seen Figueiredo has been more wrestling heavy at 125 or at 135 than he was at 125. But we just saw Sandhagen face Umar, and his takedown defense is top notch. So I don't think that's really a path here, and he's not going to be able to outstrike him. Maybe he lands a big shot, but his power, I don't even think it's been as impressive at 135. So I don't know if it's carried up there. So I don't think he's had a knockdown in quite, or a knockout. I mean, he knocked down Marlon Vera, which is obviously impressive, but I just don't know if it's going to be enough to knock out Sandhagen. So yeah, I think Sandhagen cruises to a decision here. -5.5 is -200. I'd play the minus whatever 9.5, whatever the other alt options are. So.
I was going to point out also that Figueiredo had a much closer fight against Marlon Vera. Ironically, Sandhagen only won by split decision over Vera in one of like the worst split decisions I've ever seen. That was such a one-sided fight. Anyway, let's get to the official picks. So the red and blue fight picks have been ran very hot last week. We were up over 7 units. Overall, we went, I think, 11-2 with our picks. The only 2 losses, one being a bigger plus money prop. So we're feeling very confident, and we're feeling very confident with our picks this week. So let's jump right into it. We are going to do our team bets are going to be 3 units on Montel Jackson and Corey Sandhagen, which comes to -128. We're going to do 2 units on Miesha Tate money line, and we're going to do 1 unit. The Tate money line was -150, and then we're going to do 1 unit on another chalk parlay with Jillian Robertson, Azamat Bekoev, and Bo Nickal coming to plus 114. So 6 units total together. And then we're each going to take 3 units to ourselves. I'll go first. I just talked about it. Corey Sandhagen by decision. I'm going to do 1.5 units because the decision right now is minus 150. So 1.5 units to win 1 unit. I talked about it. I love Jackson this week. I love Montel Jackson. I'm going to do 1 unit on his knockout at plus 350. And then I'm going to do my last half unit on Mason Jones by decision at plus 145. Red Ray, do you want to give your picks?
I'm going to go Miller. Miller money line, 1 unit on that. I got a half unit on her inside the distance. 1 unit on Bekoev by KO, it's plus 200. And then finally another half unit on Jillian Robertson by KO at plus 800.
And just to make it clear, the Miller was plus 195 and Miller inside the distance was plus 500. Now keep in mind, folks, Blue Bart undefeated last week. Red Ray, a couple losses. So just keep that in mind when placing your bets.
We're still in the positive end. We're plus our ROI. That's
very
all that
true. Very true. So looking forward to the fights this week. I think it's a pretty underrated card. I'm looking forward to it. And then next week, we get back to a pay-per-view as we have the welterweight title on the line and the women's flyweight title on the line at UFC 315 in Montreal, Canada, as Bilal Muhammad versus Jack Della Maddalena is the headliner. So looking forward to breaking that down and giving picks out next week. Thanks for listening. Please follow us on x.com/R&B Fight Picks. We give out the picks on there each week, and then we recap each pick in real time. So please give us a follow. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Thanks for listening, and best of luck.